Okay, everyone. Now,
I'm
let me take one moment. I mean, Mario will introduce himself, so I just want to tell you why he's here, who he is. So he's a former student. He's an alumnus of the bachelor program in London. He focused. He graduated with a major in entrepreneurship, but he's been working in London startups ever since, and he's learned a lot about startups that do business using AI in a strategic way, in different ways. And that's again the main reason why I wanted him to be with us, both because he's an alumnus, a former student of mine, and we've been in touch ever since. So I really wanted him to be back, but also because he came last year and he did a great job giving your classmates from last year a number of insights on how to think about creating value with AI, what's being done. So these are all good ideas for you to use for your final project. That's it. I have no more to say. Mario, the floor is yours. The screen is yours.
thank you. I don't know if I did a great job, but I think, like students enjoyed the presentation. I was reading through, before introducing myself, I was reading through like the questions, and some of them will be answered already throughout the presentation. But then I'm happy to share my screen and answer the sort of questions that everyone has. So yeah, I'll just share my screen. I should have stop notifications from work and everything, so it should be fine. Let me just, do you guys see my screen?
Perfectly, yes.
Okay, good. That's amazing. All right. So just let me put in percentage ones. Okay, so hi everyone, thank you for joining today. So today I'm going to talk a bit about artificial intelligence, but taking a sort of the view of the business environment. So how do businesses actually take advantage of AI in real-time applications? I am not sort of like a data scientist. I'm a business student, like all of you are. I've always been super passionate in technology, artificial intelligence, and big data, and this is just my passion outside of my job. And I decided to sort of work in startups ever since I left Hult, because I think it's a very exciting space where to be. And entrepreneurship has always been the way for for human beings to like bring innovation into the workplace and disrupt sort of the normal mechanisms on which businesses operate normally. So a bit about me: I graduated from Hult in 2017 in entrepreneurship. Alessandro was one of my professors. I started working at QuickUp. People in London or Dubai would know about QuickUp. It's a delivery company. Like we used to do in London, it's now closed, but it is operating in Dubai. We used to operate on-demand deliveries for businesses and restaurants. And it was a very exciting moment for me, because it was the first sort of job out of uni, but it was also the first time I got really into artificial intelligence. We were using, and QuickUp still uses artificial intelligence in a lot of ways. And I'm going to talk a bit about how. But imagine QuickUp as a very small niche Deliveroo, sort of. Then I left QuickUp because QuickUp moved the headquarters to Dubai. And at the time, I wanted to stay in London for various reasons. Not because my girlfriend was here. This is another story, but yeah. And I started working at Pusher. Pusher is a real-time data API platform, as you could see from the website. And after a year and a bit working at Pusher, I now had growth marketing and product analytics, and I manage a team of 3. So just a bit about Pusher. What Pusher enables companies to do is to send data across a multitude of devices in real time, and without the need of spinning any sort of infrastructure. What this means is that if you're BBC and you have, I don't know, 1 million, 2, 3 million users downloading the BBC app every day, and you want to send them push notifications, the way Apple and Android are building a push notification system wouldn't allow sort of BBC to have the guarantee of sending those notifications in real time. And BBC would have to build a lot of servers, would have to invest a lot in infrastructure. Well, they just connect to our API and we send the notification for them. this is one of the easiest applications. The other application is when you book an Uber and you see that the driver is moving on the map in real time. Well, that's thanks to the technology that we operate. Now, Uber was one of our clients and they became too big to use us, meaning that for security reasons mainly, they needed to spin their own servers and have all of the data inside their warehouses, even though all of our data is end-to-end encrypted. End-to-end encrypted meaning we don't see the data coming in and we don't see the data going out. We quantify the data in how much weight it has, so how many kilobytes or megabytes of like data we are sending and receiving across, but we don't know what the data is. Other examples of Pusher applications is, for instance, the Washington Post is a client of ours, and what they do with Pusher is whenever there is whenever the elections are on and you see the polls updating in real time, streamed on the networks, on newspapers, they use Pusher. So it's super interesting. For instance, one of the cool things that we sort of took advantage of, even though it was a bug, to get viral, is that Starbucks powers their ordering screens all over the world through Pusher, and they had a bug, and basically they had the blue screen appearing on all of the Starbucks store around the world, and there was error while connecting to Pusher, and there was our logo. And so basically we sort of asked all of the developers in our community to take a screenshot and post it on Twitter, because it was funny, because like you could go on a Starbucks and see a blue screen that talked about Pusher. And that's how disruptive our technology is. Again, it's a very simple mechanism, but we do it in such a way that businesses rely on us. Tesla uses us to power the dashboards in their cars. We have a lot of clients that use us for any sort of number of reasons. I always talk about Pusher like a Swiss Army knife, not because I'm Swiss born, but because you can use it for so many applications that sometimes we have clients coming in and say, oh, we use Pusher for this. And I'm like, wow, I didn't know you could use that. You could use us for that. So to talk a bit about artificial intelligence now, I think, artificial intelligence is present everywhere, even though we don't know about it. Snapchat is built on artificial intelligence. Instagram is built on artificial intelligence. Anything nowadays can be built on AI. Is always these buzzwords, machine learning, neural networks, algorithms that predict whatever. Again, it's much easier than that. It can be described as much easier than that. So pretty much 40% of businesses are using AI technology in the workplace. And the rest sort of like for 88% of the businesses, this is like statistics like all over the world, that don't use AI at the moment, use providers that rely on artificial intelligence. So it's either you're using artificial intelligence directly for your own business, or you're buying a software, you're using a provider. It can be Google Docs. They use artificial intelligence to predict the number of words a person is going to write on a document, for instance. You can use a software that relies on artificial intelligence. So if you're not using AI now, this is a business constraint, you will be using it soon, because the advantages of application built on machine learning are too high in terms of the business cost savings and benefits not to use them. One of the other things is that if traditional businesses are not using AI now, it's predicted that in the next 3 years, they will hire someone internally to be a champion of artificial intelligence and to bring artificial intelligence to the workplace. Artificial intelligence can be used to drive efficiency at any block of the value chain. And this is because the economy is built on the concept of scarce resources. And this is a problem. It's becoming more and more a bottleneck towards profitability, which is ultimately what most of the businesses are looking for. When I say most of the businesses, it's because if you look at startups, for instance, they are attractive to investors because they burn cash. Now, this is a sort of like it's a difficult thing to understand in the beginning. It's like, why should investors invest in a company that is not profitable and that constantly needs cash to be fueled? Well, because that's driving innovation. And usually when you burn cash is because you don't have a go-to-market strategy that enables you to make profit out of what you're selling, but you have a strong engineering and product team that is building something innovative. And so like the problem here is that Pusher, for instance, is a company of 25, and we have 15,000 clients, and we power real-time networks all over the world, which means that actually, the resources are not that many. We have 10 engineers, we don't have 100. And that's why we're disruptive. And that's why for us, for instance, artificial intelligence is super important. Because again, we have so limited resources that we need to be able to predict trends. So again, the transformation of this is the first step towards understanding AI, is that the transformation of the business mentality is going from influencing to predicting trends. Now, if we think about influencing, we think about, we want to know, we are Nike, and we want to sell a lot of shoes. So what we're doing is we're partnering up with Michael Jordan, and we build Air Jordan to influence the market in buying Nike because Michael Jordan wears them. Well, now, if Kim Kardashian is very famous, I want to predict, as an influencer, as a marketing company, I want to predict who's going to be the next famous Kim Kardashian in 3 years. Because if I get access to that person now, I can actually make that person sign a contract with me, which is much cheaper than what it's going to be in 3 years. So what you do there, you can take Instagram, you can take like all of the social networks, put them take the profiles of people and like monitor them constantly and build a model to predict how many followers these people will have in 3 years. And this is what marketing companies around the world are doing now. But also, the other problem is that if I am Corona and I'm actually producing beers, I want to know what the impact of coronavirus is on my brand. And I can predict that because I know how many people are searching for it and how many people are associating my brand with what's happening around the world. So you have a micro trend and a macro trend, and you can compare them together and say, actually, unfortunately, I will tell my production units to lower the production of beer so that I can save money, because I know that this is going to have a negative impact on my brand. In the same way, if you are EasyJet, you want to use artificial intelligence to predict how many tickets you will sell, because that in turn will tell you how many slots you need to book at any airport, and so on and so forth. So this, combined with the transformation of the business environment, that is going from a very heavy asset-heavy model to a very light asset-light model, is why artificial intelligence is very appealing to companies. Again, companies are built less and less on assets and more on services. So what if I were to ask you, and this is a question, what's the biggest real estate company in the world? What would you respond? In class, it's easier. I don't know how you guys can respond to this, but
you can use the chat.
Just like, yeah, that's a great idea, actually. I cannot see the answers. Sorry. Ale, could you read them to me? Sorry, because I'm sharing my screen, so I can't see the.
Okay, sorry. Yeah. So far, the first answer is Brookfield, Berkeley, Tata, Evergrande Real Estate out of China, Annaly Capital Management. I answered Airbnb.
And that's the correct answer. So like Airbnb, yeah, I mean, you knew, so that doesn't count, but Airbnb is the biggest real estate in the world. They don't own any real estate. What's the biggest taxi company in the world? Well, that's Uber, but they don't own any cabs. So you can see here what I mean when I say that the business environment is moving from a asset-heavy company to asset-light companies. It's companies that exploit other people's assets to drive value without having to sort of invest in this infrastructure. And that's what's happening all over the world, really. You can think of any company that is disruptive nowadays and think about how many assets they actually own versus how many assets they actually don't own, and how much they're using, like infrastructure that is already there and existing to provide value. So again, like if you think about business, weight causes friction, and this is like, look, physics is normal, is the word. Like if something is heavy, and you're trying to move that something from A to B, there is some friction. So again, capital causes friction because you need more capital. Assets cause friction because you have assets, you have inventory, you have a lot of stuff to deal with. Resources cause friction because you need to pay for these resources, and these resources are scarce. And labor is what causes the highest friction. It's estimated that, and this is something I was discussing with our head of HR, 90% of the inefficiencies in the business environment are caused by people. And this is not because we sort of want to replace people with machines, but it's because people feel emotions. And so if you're tired one day, you'll produce less. If you're not motivated, if you had a fight with your wife the day before, you'll produce less. If you're happy because you just received the pay rise and there's an extrinsic motivation towards your work, you will produce more. And that's unfortunately how, like, everyone, including me, operates. So artificial intelligence is what is enabling companies to rely less and less on assets and more on prediction. If you can predict how many shoes you will sell in the next 5 years, you can actually save a lot of money, because if you're a smaller company, if you're not Nike, you don't have the resources, you don't have all of the production centers. If you're a smaller company and you're just trying to build to sort of sell shoes, you want to know how many shoes people will buy. If you don't know that, what you will end up doing is produce a ton of shoes, and then you will end up selling them at 50% discount, because otherwise you don't sell the inventory. So what if you could predict the production costs? What if you could predict how much you need? This can enable you to do a few things. Can enable you, again, not to produce too much. And we don't want to take about, we're not environmentalists here. I don't want to take about the waste, but that's a big factor as well. Is like, okay, I don't produce more than I need. It can help you negotiate better rates with suppliers. Because if you're like, okay, like I'm producing 100 now, but what if in 3 years I'm producing 5,000? I can sign a contract with the supplier and say, look, we know that we will produce X in 3 years. Now we're producing 100, but let's sign a contract that enables us to scale and reduce the price per unit on the basis of the production that we will give you guys in the next 3 years. And so, like, again, we can think about all of these sort of as moving towards having 50 offices around the world to only one office and be able to control the entire production line, moving from having thousands of employees to employing data centers. But again, is this really light? That's my question. Is artificial intelligence really light? Well, I don't think so, really, because it's just because of the weight is moving. The weight is moving from physical desks to the cloud. Is moving from physical people to data centers. And it's like, think about electric cars, right? Electric cars don't pollute the environment in central London or in central New York or in Philadelphia or wherever, in Dubai. But where does the electricity produced to fuel those cars come from? If it comes from carbon, if it comes from burning, if it comes, it's going to pollute somewhere else. So you're just moving the weight from infrastructure that is more visible, for instance, fueling stations, or towards infrastructure that is less visible. But for instance, if you think about Google data centers, they use probably the same amount of energy that that a petrol sort of company would use. That's no difference. They have to spin tons and tons of server. Think about, I don't want to talk about cryptocurrencies, but think about Bitcoins. To mine Bitcoins, what you use graphic cards. You don't use CPUs. You don't use processors. You use graphic cards. Why? Because graphic cards can do something that processors are not very good at doing, which is computing in parallel. If you're playing a game, if you're playing the next, the new FIFA 2025 for PS4, that graphic card is processing a lot of image data in parallel, and that consumes a lot of energy. So again, the weight of the business environment is moving from a very physical weight to a very digital weight that we don't see, but is there. Now, how, again, it's sort of like driving value through AI can be done in very simple ways and in different ways. So for instance, again, if we talk about operations, which is what we talked so far, is AI can be used to answer the fundamental dilemma between matching supply and demand. I can predict demand, I can analyze the positioning and movement of assets, and I can automate labor-intense tasks. Now, how do you do that? It can be as simple as using an Excel spreadsheet and building a machine learning model, which will calculate that data so fast that I will have an answer immediately. Now, artificial intelligence is built on data. And so the more data you fuel your artificial intelligence mechanisms, the more data that will mine and the more that algorithm will know. So if you have, for instance, if you're a company and you've been selling, I don't know, again, shoes for the past 20 years, you know exactly, you have a lot of data points. You know how many shoes you sell in each market, you know what's the color that sells the most, you know, you have a lot of that. But what if you could ingest in external events to understand how your demand will fluctuate depending on those events? For instance, at QuickUp, the company I was working at before, we built, like our data team built an algorithm that could predict how much the demand for delivery services will shift depending on which teams were playing that night. For instance, we knew that if Chelsea was to play, demand in the area around Chelsea would go up by this much in these hours of the day. And so we could provision more drivers there and reduce the time to deliver in return and save money on that. Now, I think that operations is, you know, sort of the field where artificial intelligence has been implemented in the highest way at the moment, but this is shifting as well. And now suddenly we have other sort of places where artificial intelligence is being used, which are, for instance, sales and marketing. And this is what I do and what I've been doing for the past 5 years. How do we know that what we're trying to sell is selling? How can we sell what we're trying to sell in a very efficient way? Well, we want to automate email sending times on the basis of the prospect's behavior. And you say, well, how do we know that? Well, it's fairly simple. If I know that this is a client and I can see that the client is on my website and the client goes on my website every day at 5, I'll send him an email every day at 4:30. And you know, it's by looking at different data points that we have available, because we can track people and we can track their behavior, and it's scary, but we can do that. And we just need to use those data points at our advantage and build an algorithm that will aggregate that data and use it at a very high level. Because of course, I don't have time to look at when all of my clients are on my website. So I have an algorithm that predicts that on the basis of their behavior and aggregate that data. And then I can feed my marketing automation software to send emails at best time. We can also personalize the messaging depending on what they do. We have a scraper that uses machine learning to find out what our prospects are searching for before they come on our website. What we do there is that, for instance, if they Googled real-time API infrastructure and they got to the Pusher website, we will send them an email that says, hey, thank you so much for looking into real-time infrastructure. And that message is highly personalized because that person has actually searched for that term. And so it becomes familiar for them. Now, this is actually, sales is the first step, but marketing is really, really where I see the value of artificial intelligence in the business environment, because I use it every day. And it's because you unleash the power of predicting analytics to speed up the funnel. So for instance, you can identify the ideal buyer profiles through AI. You can influence decision makers through AI, and you can analyze and test efficiency of content. What this is as simple as what we do at Pusher, for instance, is we build ads on LinkedIn, on Facebook, on wherever. And those companies apply machine learning algorithms to predict how many people will see my ads and what my sort of click-through rate would be and what my return on investment could be in return. So actually, we are applying algorithms to say, all right, if for the usual question is to build a repeatable go-to-market strategy. If you think about sales and marketing, it's always about finding predictable revenue. Predictable Revenue, by the way, is an amazing book by Aaron Ross, which is the person that scaled Salesforce from $0 to $1 million in MRR, in monthly recurring revenue. And it says something very simple. If you can predict how many dollars of revenue you will get in return for how many dollars of marketing spend you will put into the system, you have repeatable revenue. It's a model that says we cannot afford to spray and pray. We cannot afford to spend money hoping that people will come in return. We need to know where we're going to spend that money. We need to know what are the intent signals that are going to tell us how to spend that money so that we drive the highest number of revenue, the maximum revenue that we can. Now, again, it's not about the strategy. It's never about the strategy. AI doesn't provide a strategy. A strategy is the formulation of your business thoughts, your intuitions, your feeling, and the data you have, plus your knowledge of the business environment to formulate a plan of actions with some objectives and key results that you want to achieve. And that's human. Machines, and this is when like, oh, machines will take over. No, I think, wait a second, machines will take over when it comes to a lot of tasks, but we will always be the driver of strategy. Again, is because we build businesses and therefore we have the insights and we have the sort of creative wave of our brain. And it's also why purposely in this image, the brain is divided, is because we have a creative angle. We see things from a creative perspective. We go on holiday and we come back recharged because we've seen something different, because our brain has been stimulated by something, and that something is causing us to make different decisions. And that's not AI. That's not the role of AI. The role of AI is to empower us with aggregating a lot of data to increase speed, efficiency, and in return, if we're talking about marketing, conversions. So how do I use AI in a practical way? Well, at Pusher, I manage 1.6 million in marketing budget every year. It can seem quite a lot of money, but I actually don't even see that money going in and out. It's so quick. If we're just spending money and we see revenue in return, well, that's great. But I personally account for every penny spent. My CFO will fire me if I cannot justify why I spend that dollar in marketing budget, because I'm 26 and I manage 1.6 million a year in marketing budget. And that's why, for instance, then to get to an abstraction, people think that marketing is advertisement. Not really. My job is to look at data. I have a team that I manage that they build all of the creatives, they build the assets. I have a designer, I have a front-end engineer. I look at data and I build a strategy on it. And that's marketing nowadays, especially if you work in B2B sort of companies where you are selling to companies. So again, we have algorithms that analyze large volume of structured and unstructured data. What I mean by this is like you have some structured data, which is the clients you have, how much money they spend, where they come from, the industry they work in. And then you have unstructured data, which is actually our prospects started following our competitor on Twitter. What does that say? Well, nothing. But if we see that 200 of our clients are following our competitors on Twitter, we need to ask ourselves a question. So this is an example of saying, actually, we have algorithms that I have an algorithm that tells me whether my clients are searching for my prospects. And that's buying intent. That signal that says, well, we need to worry about it because that's a problem. So the other thing is we can use AI to identify behavioral trends and determine the optimal set of variables for a campaign. So again, I can use sort of prediction software and marketing attribution software to say, actually, these are the buying intents. This is what we see in the market, and this is what people are responding to. And I can literally test different sets of ideas in a very optimized manner so that I can run a campaign for a week and then take that data and aggregate it and create a lookalike sort of model that is going to predict how that campaign is going to go for 2 months. Before the existence of this software, we had to run a campaign for 6 months and then, so that we had a sample size that was big enough for us to drive any conclusions. Well, now I just need to run it for a week and then the algorithm will tell me whether it's going to work or not. And that's, so, and I'm not going to spend again too much time on this again, but we can literally, what we do is optimizing the bid, which is if I'm showing this ad to this prospect and I know that this prospect's potential LTV is 2 million, I'm going to bid more so that this prospect sees the ad. If this prospect is a developer from a country that is never going to generate me revenue because we know that that country doesn't buy our software, I'm not going to spend any money to show him the ad. If he clicks on it by mistake, that's fine, but I don't want to spend my marketing budget doing that. So for me, what AI is doing is lowering costs. is increasing the overall marketing efficiency of my spend, and is shortening the path to conversion. So the dilemma here is always that if we can not only predict trends, but build a model that understands why this happens, we will not be able to drive efficiency, but to influence demand. And that's what we want to do. We want to predict demand to influence demand. We want to use all of the data points that we have to actually know how to push something to the market and know that that will sell. Because we're looking at a total addressable market and we're saying, right, if 2 million people want to buy the next Nike shoes, how many of these can I actually influence? And it's about taking that part of the market and focusing your attention on it. Because otherwise, like even if we spend 1.6 million in marketing budget a year, that's a drop in the ocean. What if that drop could be going into a swimming pool instead of an ocean? But how do we define the swimming pool is a question that we need to answer in the first place. So what's that subset of the market that we can actually influence through what we do best, which is, like putting some messaging there and some positioning. And there is no AI that will write an amazing piece of content. We tried that, it doesn't work. There is no AI that will sort of write that blog post that is going to influence the user in buying your product. It's not about writing that. That's a skill that you need to have. It's about showing that blog post to the person that is most likely to convert and using an algorithm to tell you that. So, Ale, I don't know how much time we have left.
Look, I think we're doing fine. The class has 45 minutes. I want them to have time to ask you a few questions.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So this was a slide that we were talking about quickly. Like it's investing in AI. I don't know if this is interesting, or I can talk about it quickly, or I should just keep it maybe.
So, to be honest, this is something I would like you to discuss, but if that's okay with you, I would suggest, can you skip it now?
Yeah, absolutely.
Come back to after a round of questions, because I think that there will be questions about it.
Yeah, exactly. This is the last slide, which is like, again, examples of company leveraging AI. Sorry, I need to drink. You can read in the meantime, but it's like, for instance, Deliveroo. What Deliveroo uses artificial intelligence for is to predict the need for drivers and their positioning. Again, as I said, if Deliveroo knows that on Tuesdays, Champions League is happening, and they know how many people watch Champions League, they can ingest all of this data. They can get, how many people are watching the game, how many people live in a certain area, what's the density of postcode, and so on and so forth, and what's the basket value of that sort of postcode. They can see, right, we have a very huge revenue potential around Knightsbridge in London, or around, I don't know, East Village in Manhattan or whatever. And they can actually send a lot of drivers that way because they know that there is going to be a lot of demand. The other thing that they can do is, and this is super interesting because it drives costs down in a very high way, in a very high manner, is what's the likelihood of my neighbor ordering food 5 minutes after I do? If they can predict that, they can actually look at how many people order food on a street and stack the orders, which means I know that customer A is ordering from one, like Madison Square Garden Avenue, and customer B is ordering from the 5th number of the same streets 10 minutes after, from a restaurant that happens to be very close to the restaurant where customer A ordered. I can only employ one driver. I can send one driver to do both jobs, and I save a lot of money because it's go to restaurant A, pick the food, go to restaurant B, pick the food, go to customer A, go to customer B. So how do you actually...
This is the reason why when my Deliveroo driver is pretty much downstairs, he's never there. I still have to wait.
Yes, exactly.
Now you open my eyes to all the frustration I've experienced.
Yeah, exactly. It's because they actually are saving a lot of money by doing that. Yeah. And like again, how do they do this? Is by building a neuronal network that can predict how many orders will come from any given place. And it's because also like they have, especially this doesn't work in small cities. Again, this is they're not trying to save money in Aberdeen or in Glasgow either. Like they're trying to save money in London because it's super dense. This is where, and that's why it's super interesting to look at AI for operations, but it has limitations. Again, it's limitations such as the speed of the drivers. The driver cannot go too fast, or the density of population, the demand, the availability of restaurants, how busy the kitchens is. Like there is for delivery, there is a lot of implication when it comes to operations. When you're looking at sales, marketing, when you're looking at predicting business, you have no limitations. because especially if you are a software company, you're selling to the world. My marketing campaigns run in Mexico, run in Australia, I don't care, because I know how much revenue. Also, what we built is an algorithm that automatically distributes the budget that we have on the basis of how much revenue we're generating from that country in that given week. So if I see that this week a lot of people in Colombia are buying my software, well, I'll spend more money there. That's the frequency. AI doesn't really make a difference in terms of your ability to do things, because we could look at all of these data sets and analyze them, but it would take us 2 years. I can make decisions weekly that 5 years ago I had to do yearly. And think about Zara, for instance. Zara is the super fast company that gets every 2 weeks, they get a new line of production into the shops. How do they do that? Is because they aggregate tons of data and they see that everyone on Instagram is wearing red that week. So actually the stores next week will be full of red clothes. And that's how they do business. Zara is not a clothes business, it's a prediction algorithm business. Like, that's how I think about it. But again, we have Babylon Health, which is one of the leading providers of care. What they do is they are able to aggregate patients' history and apply preventive medicine. So it's very quick and very easy. It's if there are 15 people, if there are 500 people between 40 and 50 years old that have a headache, and after 3 days of a headache, they develop knee pain, and after 3 days of developing knee pain, they develop, I don't know, arthritis or something. And I hope that doesn't happen. But what they can do is, like, if a person between 40 and 50 years old goes on the platform and says, I have an headache, and after 3 days and starts having knee pain, they can quickly tell him, look, you should look for arthritis. And this is something that they couldn't do before, because now they have such a huge database of data. They can aggregate data on all of the patients and help people prevent sort of diseases, because they actually know that what's the correlation between the first problem you have with the developing of secondary and and more like health problems. The third company is one that I love, is Tessian. What they do is they put a bot in any employee inbox, and they analyze the behavior of an employee from what they do from their just their Gmail account, really. You would say, oh, this is a violation of privacy. Well, no, because actually, again, this process is end-to-end encrypted. So the employer will never have access to employees' data, and the employee will never have access in return, and not even Tessian does. What the algorithm does is predicting the chance of fraud. It's not the employer that wants to spy on their employees, is actually the employer that wants to protect the employees from potential fraud, from potential people that say, hey, you should sign this contract, or hey, you should pay us this. Or again, from the employee sharing confidential information outside the company. And how do they do that? Is just employee X, red flag. They did something wrong. The algorithm doesn't know what. The employer doesn't know what. So that relationship is still personal, saying, look, we know you did something wrong. We don't know what, because that's your privacy, but you're a red flag. If it happens again, we'll take a disciplinary action. So you actually remove the problem of privacy, but you can still, do this. And also, it's more than that. This is one of the applications, but it's again enabling cybersecurity. Onfido is another company I love. What they're doing is basically they're enabling most of the gig economy workers to get a job. So if you're a Deliveroo driver, you go to Deliveroo's headquarters and you have to show your driving license, you have to show your you have to show your documents and so on and so forth. How do they make a decision so quickly? You cannot wait a month. They cannot go through like your background checks, your records. Well, Onfido does that. You upload a picture, a name, a social security code, or like national insurance number, whatever it is. And they quickly analyze all of that database, and they connect to various data sources to tell you yes or no, this person is fit for the job or not. And it's amazing. It's just like you can go to the Uber headquarters, and as long as you have all of the documentation, you're out on the street picking up passengers in 1 hour. It's insane. It's so good. And so, yeah, like I hope that this presentation was able to give you like more insights on how do companies actually use AI. Because again, the problem is that a lot of people think about AI as this big myth, and they don't know what to do with it. And like everyone uses it, and it's easy. So thank you.
Thank you, Mario. Well done.
So I have the questions here.
Yeah, no, but I think that, so those questions, they were, I think most of them were written before you started.
Yeah, I have some that were written after.
Some were written during. Excellent.
Yeah, during, yeah.
So
Okay.
what I suggest is, I mean, first, if anybody has any live question that they want to ask. Yeah, Carolina, for example.
Yeah, I wanted to know, how do you reassure your customers that their data is safe with you, that you're not?
So again, what we do is we have something called, again, end-to-end encryption, which means that we use an encryption algorithm. We give them a key, and that's a key that they use to send data our way. And in return, we have another key, which is for that customers. And that key, sort of the algorithm, converts the data into actual information. But that process is end-to-end encrypted. What this means is that we don't see any data coming in and they don't see any data coming out. Because so the data enters our servers encrypted, and after the data leaves our servers is then decrypted to go to the actual customer, to their sort of customer in return. So we don't have access to any of the data of our clients. We don't care. What we care about is where the information goes and how much of that information.
Yeah, so it wouldn't be possible for you to access the data even if you wanted to.
No, because the keys are randomly generated every time a message is sent or received. So we sent since Pusher was born, like the company, we sent 21 trillion messages. We wouldn't be able to. It's too much.
Thank you.
Also, the other thing to say is that that key also encrypts the client. So we don't even know which client is sending that message to the other. Like the algorithm knows because they have to send the data in the right direction, but we don't.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions that you would like to ask to Mario directly? Or comments to make, or clarifications, or things that you liked or didn't like the presentation? I mean, anything.
Yeah, I do have a question.
Please, Momin, please go ahead.
Yeah.
Advantage over your competitors.
Sorry? Can you repeat the question? Sorry.
What's your advantage over your competitors? What do you do better than your competitors?
It's interesting. It's a super easy thing. We have a developer community. So the developers love us because we give them tons of stuff for free. We give them t-shirts once they sign up. Again, this is something we use artificial intelligence for. So what I built is a marketing campaign that I love. It's whenever you sign up and you're a developer and we know where you work and stuff, we plug into the Weather Channel API and we do something which is, we send you a Starbucks voucher and we send you a t-shirt. So what we do is, if you're in London and it's raining, I'm going to send you an email saying, hey, like, thank you so much for signing up for Pusher. We love you as a valued customers. Here are the links to our community. Join our community. Also, I noticed that it's raining in London. You should definitely treat yourself to a cup of coffee. Here's a Starbucks voucher. And by the way, your t-shirt is on the way. So it's about building the developer experience. It's about giving value to developers. What developers love is access to easy documentation, access to tons of tutorials. We have 600 to explain them how to use your product, and a lot of free stuff. So like they love free things. But like what we, in terms of like to answer the question in a more serious way, was we do best is we ask their feedback. We have a developer relationship team that talks with all of our developers, with the people that love what we're doing. And we have a tons of follow-up with people that actually support us in communities. For instance, we support a lot of North Africans development communities. We give them a lot of server power for free. And we spend a lot of money on it, but like we're super happy to see, for instance, young students in South Africa implementing real-time technologies, and we want to finance that. You know, it's about doing the right thing. It's about understanding that our customers are developers that love experimenting with things, and understanding that 95% of your clients will never pay you $1. Your revenue comes from that 5-10% of clients that can actually afford to pay you. And this is history of software development. This is 15-20 years ago, the best software companies were open source. And what did they get in return? You said like, actually open source, it means that it's free. No. If you think like Ubuntu, for instance, which they have a distribution of Linux, which is an amazing operating system. Ubuntu in Africa, I don't know the language, I'm sorry, but I don't know exactly where language it comes from, but it means doing good for the community. And why do they make millions and millions in revenue a year is because they did one thing well, which is give your product for free. What you get in return is hundreds of thousands of developers debugging your software, because if you give it for free, they tell you, look, there is a bug here. They will evangelize your product. So in return, you have a huge marketing department, and they will influence your product roadmap because they will tell you, look, I love your software, but I need this feature. And so you aggregate the data and so on and so forth. So that's the advantage we have to our competitors, is that we love developers. We are developer first. We don't care about, like, the revenue comes as a consequence. It's like when you are at Hult, you study because you want to get an A. And that's what I used to do. I studied because I want to have a good grade. But actually after uni, you realize that you shouldn't study because you want good grades. You should study because you want to learn. If you learn, good grades will come in return. And that's something I thought I would never say, because I'm like, no, I need to study because my parents want me to get a good grade. It's cool. It's good. You need to learn. And if you learn, the good grades will come. You need to do
the only reason why Mario's been invited to say this last sentence, right?
Yeah, actually, Ale is paying me on the side to say this. But yeah, anyway, I think this is what we do best, is just loving developers, and yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, Mario, what do you say? Do you want to start answering some of the questions?
Yeah, sure. What's our best-selling product service? Well, we actually have two products, and we sell channels, which is our best service product. Is again enabling companies to streamline the data distribution from to streamline the data distribution to millions of users. Why? Because it does one thing: receives and send data at a very high level of volume, and never fails. We have customers that tell us that the product just works. Literally, you implement a line of code, you forget about it, and it works. We have 99.997% API time. The only 0.003% of API downtime we have, which means when the service is not available, is when no one uses us. And unfortunately, we're very transparent, so we cannot put 100% API uptime, but we basically work every time, all the time. This is because we built a data replication model that has data spreading all around the world in different servers that are called clusters, so that if one server, it's like Bitcoin, if one server fails, there are tons of others that can pick up quickly with the sort of latency that is not visible to the human eye. So yeah.
Sorry, Zaki had a question before we go ahead with the next one.
Sorry?
Zaki wanted to ask you a question.
Sure, yeah.
Hey, thank you for coming. I wanted to ask, maybe it's not as directed at what you said, but it just came as an idea. So I did this project for economics where I was studying about artificial intelligence, or moreover technology in modern business, and how it can create economic efficiency, not only just a company, but as an economic institution, like, for example, a country's economy and then a global economy. So as we understand now that several studies have stated that AI can increase efficiency by 30 to 40% within a company. However, at the same time, when companies are interacting with companies around the world, so for example, a company in the UK which has implemented AI heavily in their business chain, or in their because they have the means to do it in terms of resources and money and etc. But if they're dealing with a company, for example, in India, who don't have digital technology or access to the as complex digital technology as that company, there have been studies that it states that it might create an inefficiency of economic exchange on an international scale. And that is a problem. That is a problem that I think has been seen since AI has been being implemented in the West so quickly, but in developing economies, which are also considered as economies where raw materials or general products are made, is something that is a huge source, right? So my question is, like, how do you see that developing in the next years? Like, how can companies, like, for example, Pusher, or bigger companies, or as more developed economies, can help smaller economies catch up to pace, so that we can create a global efficiency rather than creating economic efficiency within a small country?
I think it's an amazing question. And I think it goes back to the balance of power. And that says that actually economies that have more money will be in a better place, against economies that have less money. And the effect of artificial intelligence it's scary because it's sort of like speed up that process quite a lot, which means if, again, I am the UK and I'm buying a certain quantity of petrol, I can sort of influence countries that have this raw material, that have this commodity, to give me the petrol at the best price. But what if I actually have an algorithm that predicts the demand of petrol for the next 10 years, and I know about the fluctuation of the petrol market for the past 30 years, and I can actually drive down that cost in a way that will hurt that economy? Well, it's actually the question of saying, this needs to be regulated. There needs to be regulations, and we're always talking about this gray area, because technology moves faster than law, technology moves faster than regulations, and only by people, again, doing the right thing and unfortunately regulating the market in this sense, we can stop this from happening. Otherwise, it's going to be a carnage. Otherwise, we're going to see developed economies disappearing like this, just because, again, I'm the US, I have tons of power, and I can just employ the best scientists that actually come from those countries, because we also need to think that that's also a problem of, Ale would say, why driverless cars need philosophers. Well, it's also like countries need philosopher and ethic people that have an ethic, because actually, if you're India, you're a country that is developing the best talents in tech nowadays. It's not China, it's India. I'm not into say against the two countries, but it's just because of like the philosophy there. China has always been like super good in producing goods. They have an insane know-how. They know how to replicate things, but like India has one leverage, which is innovation. Think about, and again, this is because of the balance of power. China has always been producing goods that have been designed in the north, designed by Apple in California, produced in China. India is actually disrupting that, because they are designing, while China has always been serving the sort of Western world in producing their technology. India said, wait a second, we don't have, the Western world doesn't give us as much technology to produce, well, we'll invent our own. And unfortunately, what happens there is that as with football scouts that go to Brazil or go to Argentina and scout the best players, that's the same for technology. Suddenly we have executives from Microsoft or from the US government going to India, going to China, going to Taiwan, going everywhere around Asia, and picking the best talents and say, actually, what's the highest salary your government will be able to pay you? We'll double that. We'll give you 5 times that. Come and work for us. And that's the problem. That's the balance of power shifting totally, because not only you have a person that understands what you're trying to do, but you have a person that speaks the same language and the same culture of the country you're trying to influence negatively. And yeah, it's a huge issue. So yeah.
Thank you, Mario. There was also a Moment who wanted to ask another question.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, I have a question regarding the AI softwares that you have. Did your company develop them or did you outsource them?
Again, our philosophy as a company is we always talk about build versus buy. We are building our own software to help developers around the world solve a problem. Anything else we buy, because we don't want to focus our attention to stuff that is not going to drive value to our that is not going to drive value to our product roadmap. So we use a lot of external providers. We are a third-party API. We hope that people use external providers, so we are obeying to that sort of promise that we say, actually, we are focusing on developing real-time software. If I need an algorithm that predicts how much demand for the software will be, I will buy it from another company. And that's again the sense of community, is the way where we operate in a space where we're telling people, don't build all of this infrastructure, just build your own product and buy the infrastructure from us. So in the same way we operate is, by enabling other business to sell their infrastructures as well.
Thank you.
Thanks. Okay, if you have any questions, just raise your hand. I'll see you. I'll give you the word. But I think in the meantime, also, Mario wanted to take a couple more questions here.
Yeah.
Maybe then in 5-6 minutes, we wrap it up.
So I think the third question has been widely answered over my presentation. At least I hope so. If not, please tell me. The security question has been answered. What are the most underrated skills learned in startups? Well, that's an interesting one. I think patience, for sure. I think cooperation, for sure. And I think realizing that there is no me, myself, and I in a startup. In a startup, you go in, you check your ego at the door, and you suddenly go, a month after you're working in a startup, you're in a meeting with the CEO. And that will never happen if you work in a 10,000 people company. But a month after, you're there brainstorming, you're the last person in the door, and you're suddenly brainstorming with the CEO on what the next 6 months of product roadmap could look like, just because he wants to see things from a fresh pair of eyes. And that makes you realize that the CEO doesn't have an ego in that sense. And that makes you realize that actually you can do something that matters. And how do you do that? Take that to your advantage is by staying humble, by saying, I don't know, it's not, whenever I do a presentation internally or externally, it's my team, it's not me. I haven't done anything. They've done everything. Like, I don't want to know. Like, I don't know. Like, I just, you know, I just sort of prioritize a couple of items on a Kanban board, and they came up with a brilliant idea. Maybe I came up with that idea, but is the concept of empowering other people to do what they do best. If we need to talk about work skills, I think understanding two things. It's, if you're a founder, chances you don't know how to sell the product. You know how to build the product because you're a founder. If you're a founder coming from Hult, you will know how to build the product, to sell the product, but you won't know probably what's the best way of building the product. That's the difference. Business founder versus technical founder. And that's where we talk about technology companies. So again, the best skill that you can learn in a startup, especially if you're not the founder and if you come from a business degree, is catching up with the technology that the startup is building. You need to know that technology inside out, because you'll end up speaking with engineers, you'll end up speaking with product managers, you'll end up speaking with your CEO. And your CEO, even if you're a salesperson, especially if you're a salesperson, will never think about you highly if you don't know what the product is. Because you can say, yeah, pretty much I don't know. You need to know. You need to know better than an engineer. I spend hundreds of hours reading code that I don't understand just to prove a point. You know, it's just to prove a point that I need to know what's in there, because yeah, it's boring. It's very boring. I love it, but it's very boring. But when you are speaking with an engineer, they want to know that you're up to what they're doing. They want to know that you believe in their vision. And the best skill is realizing that there is no silver bullet. Unfortunately, you cannot say, I do sales, I do marketing, I do support. Support, one of the things that actually I spent tons of hours in the support room dealing with people that said that we deliver ketchup instead of mayonnaise in their orders. And that's the best time I have ever spent in a startup. Being in a room with people that have to deal with customers every day is where you learn what to do. So it's actually, you know, you need to do the lowest level of interaction possible to have the biggest impact. The best conversations I had at Pusher have, because I worked late. And at a certain point, there were only me and the cleaning lady in the office. Best conversations ever. I learned tons from our cleaning lady. Stuff that I would never imagine I would learn. I learned the story of how she came from a third world country into the UK. She's feeding a family of 6. And actually, she's not the cleaning lady. She's the business owner of the cleaning company that cleans our building. It's just that she loves our CEO that so much, because they have interesting conversation, that she comes personally hoping to have these conversations with people. It's amazing. So yeah.
It's a very, very interesting anecdote there.
Yeah.
Mario, thank you very much. I mean, I don't know if there's any final quick questions or comment or anything to wrap the session up, but I think I loved it. I'm really happy that that you found the time to come back again this year. So thank you so much.
Absolutely.
It was great. All being recorded, so I don't know if you have a version. Thank you. Big applause.
Thanks, guys. Hope everyone is staying safe, by the way. And yeah, thank you, Ale.
Mario, if you just quickly, if I don't know if you're willing to share your deck. If
yeah,
so,
100%. Yeah.
Send it over.
Yeah.
I think you can see on the chat that there's a number of love and gratitude.
Yeah, thank you. Grazie. Thank you so much.
Grazie, Mario. It's been a pleasure as usual. Have a great day.
Cheers. Bye-bye. Bye-bye.